4 years of Trump's presidency and the visceral reaction to it have rendered the White House as unrecognizable as American politics. The world's most famous and powerful address must now feel like a besieged golden cage to the resident counting or perhaps dreading the hours to his departure. The streets all around a testimony to the churning of American politics. Washington, D.C., a fortress devoid of people, braced more for conflict than for a festival of inauguration. COVID and curfew have written a film script that no movie mogul could have dreamt up.
I'm starving. I'm bleeding to death. Everything's fine.
And then there's Karen Iron, Janis Joplin reborn, with combat onesie bombarding the outgoing president with lyrics that he won't like. A mini Glastonbury in front of the White House, a city turned into a fortress. Its very end of days, end of Trump days. In America, all the world often feels like a stage, and the men and women who now grace the digital wanted posters on Washington bus stops thought they were players making history when they stormed Congress. Now they're making charge sheets. Like Jenna Ryan, the Texas real estate millionaire who flew to Washington on a private jet to take part in the insurrection, now pleading for a presidential pardon.
We all deserve a pardon. I'm facing prison sentence. I think that I do not deserve that, and I think every person, you know, from what I understand, everyone's going to be arrested that was there. So I think everyone deserves a pardon, and I would ask the President of the United States to give me a pardon.
Get in line, Jenna. Trump's pardon wish list is growing longer. It may include the president himself and his children, who were embedded at the heart of power like no first family ever before. But snow is not the problem here. It is the threat of domestic American terrorism, here and in every other state capital in this vast country. This one is in Lansing, Michigan, also now a deserted fortress. The incoming president wants to undo the Trump legacy at warp speed. He plans to use his first days in office with emergency declaration to rejoin the Paris Climate Accords and end the travel ban against some Muslim nations. But as Karen will tell you, in song if she must, nothing's going to get back to what it used to be anytime soon. Well, Siobhan Kennedy is in Lansing, the state capital of Michigan, where there's also been tightened security. Siobhan, what's the situation like there?
Well, greetings, Matt, from a snowy Michigan. I'm here outside the state capitol building that was actually stormed by armed demonstrators last year in protest against COVID restrictions. So for that reason, they locked down here today. The stores are all boarded up around me. But as you can see behind me, just a smattering of protesters, probably more police and National Guard than demonstrators. Earlier, I caught up with some of them, one Trump supporter who said that he would never accept Joe Biden as president, and another, a member of the Boogaloo militia group, who, armed up as he was, insisted that he was just here to protect himself. Have you accepted that Joe Biden will be president?
No, he ain't president. He's never going to be my president.
He will be president as of Wednesday.
No, he won't. Not to me.
But you know what?
He won't be my president ever. And I know a lot of people just like me who ain't got the guts to show up over here and say what they got to say.
All this is 100% legal to wear wherever I'd like. So why should we be afraid of it if it's something that's legal?
Because it looks menacing, doesn't it?
I think I look American. It's my constitutional right to bear arms. So that means I'm allowed to have this weapon and carry it where I'd like.
Well, of course, that warning went out from the FBI that there could be violent armed protests across all 50 states, including this one here in Michigan. But so far, we haven't seen any of that violence materialize, perhaps having seen protesters being hunted down and arrested after last week's attack on the Capitol, that people simply decided to stay away. That could, of course, change, Matt, but so far from here and across America, so peaceful.
Siobhan Kennedy, thanks very much. Well, I'm joined now from Florida by Mick Mulvaney, who was President Trump's chief of staff until March last year, and he hopefully is with us now. Mr. Mulvaney, thank you very much for coming on the program. You know the president really well. As he is sitting in that house behind us, what's going through his mind? Does he feel like a man more sinned against than sinning?
Yeah, Matt, thanks very much and good evening. Thank you for having me. I've been asked that question a lot the last couple of days as to what's going through the president's mind. And the short answer is, and I'm not trying to dodge this, I don't know. I know what would have been going through the president's mind under similar circumstances back during the first impeachment, for example. I was chief of staff during that first impeachment, and I saw the president respond to certain challenges, certain circumstances where things went off the rails, certainly not nearly of the scope of what happened during the riots the week before last. But I saw how he reacted. He would reach out to people from a variety of different opinions. He talked to his advisors in the building. He did talk to his family. He talked to his advisors in New York City. He might call members of the House or the Senate to get advice on how to put things back together. That's not happened, or at least it didn't happen on Wednesday, didn't happen in the run-up to the riots. Don't know if it's happening now. So I don't know if the president's different than he was a year ago, if his advisors are different, but it's very difficult for somebody who's not inside that building right now to tell you what the president is thinking.
I mean, the rest of the world sees him at best as a bad loser and at worst as someone who tried to incite a coup, a failed coup. How do you think history will remember him?
There's two different things, right? Being a bad loser doesn't make you someone who incites to riot or who is partly responsible for that type of event that we had a week before last. I don't think history is going to be very favorable to him, and it's a shame because if he had left gracefully, he would have been able to look back on a very, very successful 4 years. People have forgotten now, and rightly so, that he had some of the lowest rates of unemployment amongst minority groups, the lowest rates of unemployment amongst women. We had tremendous success overseas. For the first time in my lifetime, we had no new foreign wars under this presidency. He could have looked back and said, look, I lost the election, but look at the successes I had during the first 4 years. That could have been his legacy,
right.
Beating impeachment, for example. Now the legacy will be that he is in some way involved with that riot at the Capitol.
Well, certainly his words were interpreted as an incitement to violence on Capitol Hill. And of course, then there was the big lie that the election was fraudulent. I mean, these are really unacceptable things for a commander-in-chief, aren't they?
Two different things. I've heard a bunch of different legal opinions from legal scholars, of which I am not one. I don't know if you are, as to whether or not this amounts to incitement to riot. I think the prevailing case right now is that it doesn't rise to that level, but certainly the president is not blameless over what happened at the Capitol 10 days ago. So I'm not trying to excuse the activities. If people say he incited a riot, that is a criminal charge, and I don't think it's. I don't think history will bear it out.
A couple of other brief ones. What about those Republican senators and congressmen and women who still voted against the official election result after the violence on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, I talked to a lot of them. In fact, I was there on the morning of the riots, talking to a group of them. I got asked that same question. And the short answer I gave them was like, look, if you really believe this, if you've done your research and you believe that you cannot, in good conscience, under your constitutional authority, certify this election, then by all means do it. If you're doing it for a political reason, then you need to be extraordinarily careful. I have a great deal of respect, however, for those men and women, and I know many of them, who changed their votes. Remember, the voting had started before the riots, and then they came back after the riots, and more than a few of them changed their votes under the argument that they didn't realize that it was going to have this impact on people, and there was more to it than just the constitutionality of their duties as a member of the House or the Senate. And it really did have real and devastatingly bad public impact, and I respect the folks for changing their votes. So look, the Constitution worked here at the end of the day. It came under tremendous stress. Thank goodness that Mike Pence was a good and decent man, because if he didn't, we could have real difficulties in this country right now, just as opposed to picking up the pieces. But the Constitution held, the process held, and we will have a peaceful transfer on the 20th on Wednesday.
Finally and briefly, what does President Trump do now? Is there a future for him in American politics, and how does it look?
Not very good. I can't tell you the number of people who reached out to me who have been hardcore Trump people. I'm here in Florida with my parents, who adored the man and said that riots is too far, that they loved the fact that they thought he was standing up for them. He was draining the swamp. He was standing up against the establishment. They thought that was fantastic, and they would go to great lengths to support Donald Trump. but supporting riots and insurrection and an attempt to stop the constitutional transfer of power is just too much for most normal Republicans.
Okay.
I know you've had folks on your show today who are sort of in the right-wing fringe, but that is not where the center of our party is.
Okay, got to leave it there. Mike Mulvaney, thank you very much for coming on the program. And one final footnote, the Pentagon has just announced that they will not be granting Donald Trump the kind of military goodbye that he was hoping for at exactly the same moment as the inauguration on Wednesday as he gets onto Air Force One to fly into some kind of retirement.